Hey guys, I appreciate y'all coming and hanging out with us again. This is the Game Time Discussions podcast. It's Emory Cuzzy sitting with Cameron Selby today, and we're going to talk about the AFC North, one of the best divisions in football, top to bottom. 43 total wins this year for every team. Not a single losing record.
Incredible.
Yeah, just insane. The fact that teams had to miss the playoffs from this division is crazy to say. We will see, we'll talk about the injury bug that some teams caught, quarterbacks for sure. And we're really excited. We're going to start with the Cincinnati Bengals. They went 9-8 this year, missed the playoffs, tied or right underneath 7, right there at 8 and 9 area. And they're exciting, Joe Burrow was injured. It's very unfortunate. He's had multiple season-ending injuries in his career now, and I've seen people take him out of their top 5 in the under 25 for quarterbacks just because of that, which is something that I think is a big jump almost, because some people have him at first and then all of a sudden he's not even in the top 5. So,
well, he should be out of that list now because he's 27 all of a sudden. So.
There you
go. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's just kind of injury-plagued year. It was frustrating from the jump, non-contact injury during the training camp, and then comes back and probably should have sat, but he toughed it out, started getting better, and then just non-contact tears his wrist ligament, and just kind of 2 strange injuries again, and all of a sudden now, after what he's kind of dealt with in his first 4 years in Cincinnati, kind of getting an injury-prone tag attached to him, and partially because of the line situation where they just haven't built it right. Early on, they just weren't investing in it. They finally did, and just these guys have just not panned out. Orlando Brown Jr. coming over wasn't the most successful. Lel Collins struggled and was cut. Jonah Williams, first-round draft pick, and just seems like he's a miss. And obviously moving on in free agency this year, so that doesn't help. But also, non-contact injuries have nothing to do with the offensive line, and when you're losing for multiple weeks on a rollout, and then you miss the season because of a touchdown throw, that's just like unaffected. It's crazy that those kinds of things happen. Hopefully he doesn't become a new Andrew Luck. We lost him prematurely in the NFL. He was the most talented prospect I've ever seen growing up, and retiring before he turned 30. And it was just frustrating to see. Obviously, I don't see him retiring anytime soon, but you just never know with these situations, because if you just constantly have to rehab in off seasons and whatnot, I think the level of the game kind of goes away, and that's what happened with Luck, and I'm hoping that doesn't happen with Joe Burrow.
Yeah. One of our, few franchise tagged players is on this team, in T. Higgins. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd are free agents this year. So Jamar would be the only starting wide receiver coming back if they decided to trade T. Higgins after this tag. I think that, maybe that being more stout would be good. Tight end isn't necessarily a strong suit for this team. Drew Sample's a free agent. He didn't even play that much, and he was one of their draft picks. So I think that, talking about not only the quarterback situation, but also the guys that are around him and the timing of things are a little worrisome probably for fans.
Yeah, I think it just kind of depends on what they say. Like you said, they tagged T. Higgins, so right now they have control of where he's going to go. If they bring him back, one of the best wide receiver duos in football. And if they don't, it's likely because they traded him and you didn't have to overpay on a wide receiver too. And on top of that, because of how well he's played in his career so far as a compliment to Jamar Chase, you're probably going to get basically what you drafted him for, which he was the first pick in the second round when they did draft Joe Burrow in 2019. And I would be shocked if they couldn't get a second round pick for him this year. And if you are able to do that, reinvest, because it's a deep wide receiver class. And just as a comparison, you look at like A.D. Mitchell as like a second round flyer as a mid-round, second-rounder that kind of does all the same things, great route runner, all that stuff. Just examples of guys that are available.
Right.
And then there's going to be guys like Tez Walker that can fall maybe, but could be talented enough to be first-round picks that just, there's just a run, they just get the short end of the stick. And so there's plenty of ways that they can still maintain, I guess, the receiving core that they have. We've seen some mock drafts where somehow, some way, Brock Bowers falls to them. And it's just like, if that happens, just good luck to everybody else, because he's just the epitome of what you want as a skill player at that position, because as much as he is a great tight end, but he's a great halfback. He lined up in goal line with multiple rushing touchdowns, and
he does
a
everything.
Great blocker. He does every single thing that you can ask for. So there's plenty of ways for them to improve if they hypothetically did move on. I wouldn't expect Tyler Boyd back, but I think really more so defensively is where their areas of need are. Finishing 31st in total defense. Really struggled on both stop and run and the pass this year. Didn't help that you're playing with a limited offense in the second part of the year, but they're really the only defense that truly struggles in the division. When you're in a hard-nosed battle with division opponents that just really knock each other up sideways, left and right, you could be the team that kind of struggles. And really, Baltimore, they've struggled with in divisional games when it's Joe Burrow versus Lamar head-to-head. Joe Burrow's always struggled against Pittsburgh, and then Cleveland, who number one defense this year. And so at the very least, you need to attack that way in some way, shape, or form, because you're not going to be able to outscore in low scoring games. Like, that's not the type of mindset that you should have to get over those teams. And because everybody finished in the division with a winning record, if it's of a similar nature this year, those division matchups are going to be the make and break of if you make the playoffs or not.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Cincinnati being 9-8 but struggling against the division is what did them in. Also, Joe Burrow getting out didn't help, but that's kind of how I view where they should be addressing their areas in need this offseason.
Yeah, I think corner, getting younger at edge, things like that would be definitely a stepping stone in the right direction. And also, they have really good cap space. Even after this is the updated cap after T. Higgins was franchise tagged. So 48 and a half or better is ninth, but they have already addressed their wide receiver. Now they can go out and address other positions. And like we said, the 18th pick in the draft, there are a lot of really solid tackles that are going to play right tackle, that are natural right tackles coming out of college. Tyler Guyton, Amarius Mims, J.C. Latham, all those guys are going to be in that range when they get picked. And so they might be able to find a guy that can help their offensive line and, keep their franchise quarterback, a little bit healthier.
Yeah, I mean, they're one of the few teams that I kind of see as like with true cap space that are contenders. And so I expect them to be very, very aggressive to kind of turn things around as people come back, because this is the last year. Joe Burrow's already signed his extension, but it's only $29 million cap hit this year. It's not significant. It jumps up all the way to 47 next year. So, and then on top of that, this year, Jamar Chase is extension eligible. He's going to have his fifth-year option picked up, but that's still based on the rule changes of fifth-year options. Basically a franchise tag, which is over $20 million. So those kinds of things are going to make it to where this might be the last year that they can truly just go all in via free agency if they wanted to. So that's where I kind of really see them improving and kind of turn around units of the ball that just haven't really met expectations.
Yeah. They have had some misses too in the draft, and that of course has been, we talk about Jonah Williams. He was a top 10 pick, I believe.
I think he was right at 11.
Was he 11?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
still, right in that area. I could remember exactly.
He fell to 11. It wasn't like, they overreached him. He was our favorite tackle in that class, if I remember correctly. So him missing out, it didn't really help that he had some, missed his rookie year due to injury and just dealt with. This was his first true season fully healthy, and he was out of position to an extent because he had to go to right tackle, where they thought he would be the left tackle of the future. I don't know. I don't know if he can kind of turn around his career, but I obviously don't think that it'll be in Cincinnati, based on the way that he's played.
Yeah. So yeah, let's hop over to a team that's exciting but needs the most important position in football. Mm-hmm. Mason Rudolph, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mason Rudolph, free agent, and I don't believe that they're going to want to go with Kenny Pickett after the debacle this year. Mitchell Trubisky's not on the roster, so it's up in the air, truly up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, you've heard rumors every which way. I feel like the noisiest team so far in this offseason has been the Pittsburgh thing, because 1 week Justin Fields, they're the favorite to land him. 3 days later, they're the favorite to land Russell Wilson, and then 3 days later, oh no, they're very adamant on keeping and building around Kenny Pickett. And it's like, well, they can't all be true. You got to pick a lane, and he's just really, really been very underwhelming to start his career. Very inefficient. 13 touchdowns in 25 games. It's not going to get it done in this day and age of football. And it's not like he doesn't have the weapons around him. Obviously, the offensive line was not ideal when he did come in, but that hasn't really affected him in the way that it should. Right. He's got 2 really good receivers. He's got a tandem of running backs, serviceable tight ends. He's got pieces to where you got to be putting up more than 13 touchdowns in 2 years. I mean, Joe Flacco in 5 games did that to get Cleveland to the playoffs, like at 40 years old. So it just has to turn around in some way, shape, or form. That was one of my biggest L's or misses last offseason, was I really thought he was going to take a leap based on the talent that he had around him. Because of the defense that they have, you didn't have to score 28 to win 10 games. I thought that they could you just got to get 20 points, 21 points. And they did, but it wasn't through the fault of him. They kind of benched him towards the end of the year after he was injured. He was healthy scratched. Usually you don't see that as a second-year quarterback, first-round pick, being a healthy scratch. And so it just kind of seems like that's not a great telltale sign of things to come, especially with the receivers that they have just showing blatant frustration throughout the games. Obviously, George Pickens has had some moments of just stop blocking out of nowhere, or Deontay Johnson walking back to the huddle while fumbles by his leg. Like those kinds of things that lack focus, that all starts with just frustration of just not getting the ball or figuring out ways to just move the ball down the field consistently.
I think also you talk about him being a first-round pick. I think it was almost a little bit by default.
Yeah, it definitely was.
There wasn't really anybody else in that class. If you compare him to other guys from that class, you're like, okay, well, he's probably still one of the better ones, and that's saying a lot considering he was benched. He only has those 13 touchdowns. So I think he was obviously a reach, but when all you need is a quarterback on a team, sometimes you just reach and you hope and pray that that's the guy.
Yeah, and going from Pitt to
Pittsburgh,
it just made a lot of sense. And obviously they were fresh off of moving off of Big Ben, and they were looking for a new savior. They were the team that we were thinking would take a quarterback, and I'm pretty sure both of us had Kenny Pickett going to Pittsburgh. So, it made sense that it happened. They had the weapons to be around him to make it work, and it just still has not. I think the offensive play calling was absolutely atrocious. So they actually are bringing in Arthur Smith, who obviously, if you're a fantasy football fan, that's frustrating. But at the same time, he's actually been serviceable as a coordinator. Very, very good moving the chains. He's been one of the run heaviest approaches in football with Tennessee and then with Atlanta. So whether you like or not who he gives the ball to, he does move the ball, and he was able to get Atlanta to score points with Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke at the helm, and that's impressive to do when
of course
that's what you have to deal with.
Yeah. Doesn't always use the players how we expect him to, but yeah, he was able to put up the 17th most points with those two guys. That tells you a lot about his style too. It's old smash mouth football. which I love to see. It's just I wish the ball, as fantasy owners, we want the ball to go to certain people because that's what we expect.
Exactly.
He doesn't care what we expect.
And obviously, yeah, we saw Najee Harris get picked in the first round a few seasons ago, and he honestly has not played very well to start his career. Usually running backs are one of the easiest transitions in the sport of football because you just run that way and run around that guy. And it's very, a skill set based more so than a coaching based position and really just reading holes, getting around guys, top end speed. He just doesn't have that. And Jalen Warren started taking touches away from him. But then towards the end of the year, when you started seeing bad weather football in the Pittsburgh and the Cleveland games of the world, Najee really came on strong. And he was really a bright spot towards the end of the year and how they were able to, in their quarterback issues that they had, still put up points and win games. And I mean, they were outgained their first 8 games of the season. Right. And then they let go of their offensive coordinator and it kind of turned that around to the point where they were actually scoring points. And, they made the playoffs as a 10-win team. Just can't fathom that based on the way that they were playing early in the year and just being able to win games where you shouldn't be winning them. That's just a skill set that Pittsburgh has always had under Mike Tomlin. And so, you got everything you need, Kenny Pickett. You need to just go out and get it done. Yeah. And if not, then they made a mistake not moving off of you as soon as they probably should
this year. Yeah, after this year. Mike Tomlin deserves all the credit in the world. He's been great ever since he got there. Right. Just one year after another, doing the right things, finding ways to win, defense, running the ball, things like that. And I think Arthur Smith probably gets him back to that a little bit. But yeah, so I think, that also one thing that we hadn't talked about is the strength of schedule for this team. Like we said earlier, the whole North is going to have difficulty strength of schedule wise. But, this is the team that I could see that is one of my biggest wild cards because they could either get 2 games better or they could get 4 games worse to me.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where, they have a big deviation compared to other teams in this division. I'm like, I can kind of see what's going to happen with other teams. This team is really hard for me.
Right.
So,
yeah. And then also, with Pittsburgh and their success that they've had in recent years, being able to overachieve, we can't really gloss over that without mentioning TJ Watt and how great he's been over the last 4 or 5 years. 4 All-Pros in 5 years, most sacks, most forced fumbles, most takeaways by a large margin at his position since 2019. Just incredible. I believe that a lot of people were confused about the Defensive Player of the Year when it was Myles Garrett. People maybe thought Micah Parsons deserved some. I wasn't in that boat. I was in TJ Watt's boat. How he's, flirting with 20 sacks every year, getting takeaways, just being there. He's everything, and he shows up in the big moments. One of the things that, I've kind of pointed out, Myles Garrett and Micah Parsons, who were other candidates, virtual no-shows in the playoffs. They were non-factors, didn't really see him much around the football, didn't really hear their name called in the broadcast all day. Meanwhile, TJ Watt's making all the plays in the world, and he misses the playoffs because of his knee injury, because he's out covering a tight end in the flat 10 yards down the field, and he jumps too high and lands awkwardly, and it's just unfortunate. But, he right now to me is the most talented football player on the defensive side of the ball in the league. There's so many talented options and stuff, but just based on the way he's playing, he's just consistently produced every single year, and they've been in the thick of things, and you always see his being the reason why.
Yeah, and I think actually, they have a tandem of edges now. Alex Highsmith has played great for them also, so that takes a little bit off of TJ. It'll be offensive play scheme on who they're going to chip and what they're going to do, but he's not going to get double teamed on every play. He's not going to get everything. So now it's almost like you let him loose and you just let him go. And now we have a little bit different feel when they're both on the field than everybody's just blocking TJ. So, I'm sure his brother understands that too. So it's a family affair, just getting triple teamed. So, so I think that this is a really good team, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
It's they're a very big unknown, a large part because of the uncertainty at quarterback. If they do stay with Kenny Pickett, it makes me feel a lot worse about them. I think the veteran is exactly what they need with the pieces that they have. Obviously, Russell Wilson is like the butt of every joke because of how poorly the Denver situation worked out, but he still played fine. And he's not going to put you over the top, but he will game manage you in the area that you need. He will be playing for the veteran minimum this year because of the cap hit that Denver is going to have to pay him. So he is not concerned with getting a top dollar. And what does San Fran have that they're able to continuously put around good pieces? It's because they aren't paying their quarterback.
Right.
If Pittsburgh isn't doing that because they either bench, let go Kenny Pickett because he's on a rookie deal, bring in a veteran minimum quarterback, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we don't have a ton of cap space, but the 9, 10, 12 million that we have, we can go get, that next great lineman or the corner that they've been sorely needing. That's the kind of things that you can do. And then if not, you got Justin Fields, who is a young quarterback that I think would maximize the situation that he has more so than Kenny Pickett would.
Well, that's also something we hadn't really talked about is the draft for them. We just talked about it for Cincinnati. Cincinnati has the opportunity to take a tackle. Well, so does Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has they took Broderick Jones in last year's class, but there's a couple offensive tackles that could slot in and move over to left tackle. We've also had the conversation because I think, Patrick Peterson's 34. He's probably at the back end of his age and maybe getting another guy that can play corner. I know they just went Joey Porter. We talk about, most teams probably won't go back to the same exact well, but at the same time, if it's the most pressing need, there are some really good corners that are going to be at 20.
Right. Yeah, you're not going to see a run on corners until the start of where they're at in the draft. At tackle, obviously, a ton of tackles. There's going to be some still there, but there's a lot of tackle needed teams right before them that could snag up whoever the best one is on their board. But with corner, I've seen a lot of mocks where corner isn't even taken until a Pittsburgh range.
Right.
So, that if that's what the direction that you want to go, you have your pick, basically.
17 at Jacksonville is probably my most confident place for a first corner to go. And then there's 5 corners we like, that could all go to a Pittsburgh situation, go into that type of defense and play well. So, that could be definitely an option to help them improve, just add another playmaker. But yeah, so let's move on. We're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns next. Cleveland comes off of a very interesting season, losing their starting quarterback, and then trying to find a guy that can do it, and then finding possibly one guy we probably never would have expected.
And he was sitting on the couch.
And he plays amazing. He came in with no expectations. No one thought he could do it. He just needed to go and game manage. And he was like, nah.
I'm going to swing it.
So, Joe Flacco deserved comeback player of the year. We just didn't, it was so unprecedented. We just didn't expect something like that to happen. But I think that they will have to address and figure out what to do with Deshaun, and he needs to play better. He finally decided to play well and then got hurt, and that's just not going to work. When you're trying to truly have the best defense in the league and all you have to do is score a few points.
Right. I mean, based on the talent around the team and the results in which they're having without Deshaun is the only reason why he's not the butt of every joke like Russell Wilson is. Because Denver, when it didn't work out, they went all in for him, and when it didn't work out, their team plummeted. And just the team success was not there. Cleveland has won in spite of him.
Yeah.
And, it's just been impressive to see. They had so many major injuries that happened at really key positions this year. We saw the gruesome injury to Nick Chubb on Monday Night Football early in the season, and the kind of injury that's just like, if he's not retired, he's not going to be the same. You can't expect him to be the best running back, which to me, to you and I, he's been the best running back for multiple years. That just doesn't get talked about because he's not.
He's quiet. Yeah. He's just so consistent. You're going to be like, oh, well, Nick Chubb's going to get you 80 yards today and probably a touchdown, and you're just going to be happy about it.
Right. And then you had Jedrick Wills, who very young, exciting tackle, went down midseason and out for the year. And then Jack Conklin, who's a free agent they brought over towards ACL late in the year. And man, it's just tough when you lose those guys. Yet they still won. Unfortunately, had a horrid ending. Being the number one defense and then just getting waxed by a rookie quarterback in his first playoff start is not. It kind of makes you seem like, oh, all that was for kind of not. But is what it is. Like they overcame and overachieved based on the hand that they were dealt.
Yeah,
they should be commended for that. But just kind of going into the next year, as well as Joe Flacco played, it's Deshaun's team.
Yeah,
and Deshaun, like you said, has to play better. He's just kind of been a no-show since he started in Cleveland. Obviously, he had to start with an 11-game suspension, but came back after a season and a half and did not look good. This was his first full off-season into a full season as their starter, and he absolutely sucked.
Yep.
I don't love saying that about football players, but it's hard. Like, you have to call out very talented players when they are not living up to the standards that they've set. I mean, he was rivaling as being it's not Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, it's Deshaun Watson versus Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
And, obviously the 24-0 being up in Kansas City before they started their Super Bowl runs, Houston looked like they were in perfect position. He was the reason behind that. And so obviously the situation happens, he moves to Cleveland, but you're still with one of the most talented rosters in football. We talked about that constantly when Baker was there, how there was no weaknesses. Kind of like how it is with San Fran right now. There was just nothing. The best offensive line, they had tandem 1,000-yard receivers, the best running back in football, top 3 defense, one of the best edge rushers in football, prime corner, just everything. And they really were just missing a linebacker or two, but they figured that out. With Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah.
He's so good.
Yeah, so they have it all figured out pretty much. The only thing that kind of comes with this season is that you win 11-6, you overachieve, but now it's like, all right, you were a 10-win team, you got to repeat that. And they have the toughest schedule in football this year, according to strength of schedule. Obviously, that's not everything, but obviously, when you have an entire division with a winning record, if even through a talent perspective, you have to have easier schedules to kind of make it that way. And when you have Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh all suffering major quarterback injuries, and yet they still achieved that feat, it's just kind of like that's kind of how we were at. And you should probably expect that they were probably a game or two below what they actually produced. So next year, like you said with Pittsburgh, I actually think that they have the higher variance because of the injuries that they have to deal with and the lack of cap space and the uncertainty of where to go. With Pittsburgh, they have the talent. They just have to figure out the quarterback.
Right.
What quarterback we're going with. Cleveland's got everything. It's not like they're going to get a new quarterback this year. And it's just like, I hope Deshaun comes back and does well. I hope our tackles can be what they once were. I hope Nick Chubb can still be a top 5 running back.
Right.
And that's a lot of hopes. And toughest strength of schedule. They have the lowest graded draft capital of all 32 teams. It's not a great recipe to repeat any kind of sustained success. So that's kind of where I feel like they're one of the easier bets to take a step back this year. I don't know what their win total will be, but if it is 8.5 or anything of that nature, I would probably hammer the under on that, just based on those kinds of things. And I could be wrong, but I just don't see them taking the leap that you would expect from being an 11-win team, overachieving the way they did.
Right. Well, going back to just Deshaun in general, he's getting paid the second most salary hit in football, behind only Dak Prescott. So, with that being said, their salary cap's what it is. he's got to perform for that reason too.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he doesn't perform, they can't give him more people. They can't be like, hey, yeah, because you're only getting 30 million, we can get you another receiver because Donovan Peoples-Jones, Elijah Moore haven't been doing it. They can't do that. There's no other way. Like they're kind of stuck.
Yeah,
with who they have.
That's the team you got now. No, what are you going to do about it?
Right, and if Deshaun comes back and plays what we have seen him play, they could absolutely be a 12-win team to me. But at the same time, we just haven't seen it. In the game against Houston, it was a really bad look. They got scored 40. They put 45 on them.
Yeah, two were pick sixes.
Yeah,
which, Deshaun, you're going to be the one that is either throwing those or avoiding those.
Right.
It's on your shoulders because Joe Flacco's his fair dust ran out. Obviously, borderline Hall of Fame quarterback, had a great career, but he was on his last legs, and he was just riding the pine, or riding the wave, so to speak, towards the end for the last half of the year when Deshaun went down, and he came back down to earth against a young team. And obviously, I don't think he played poorly. He just had back-to-back pick sixes, and it's kind of like a Matt Schaub thing where Matt Schaub was a very good quarterback for a long time, and then all of a sudden just could not stop throwing pick sixes, and then very quickly was out of the league.
Yeah.
So, those kinds of things are like, when you're a quarterback getting paid the second most money in terms of cap hit, you gotta produce.
There's very few quarterbacks that can throw interceptions like that and still be enjoyed and wanted on your team.
Right.
We talk about Jameis all the time because he has all the arm talent in the world. That's why he was a top 2 pick, Mariota and him back and forth type of thing, because he has all that arm talent. But 30 interceptions, like sometimes we the boom and the bust, right? The do or die, and that you had that guy. That's that type of guy. So if that happens in game, and you get 2 pick sixes,
you got here because of it. So
exactly.
Don't be upset if it goes the other way.
You won 4 games because of his style of play, and that's awesome.
Right.
So yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's hop over to the regular season AFC champs in Baltimore. Baltimore is an interesting team to me. Of course, Lamar Jackson is amazing. He's been amazing for a long time. That's not a surprise. Everybody wants to say he takes a step back and then he just overshadowed. Then he just does amazing the next year, and you're like, okay, never mind. He's an MVP. And but I've seen a lot of people talk about how they actually got him all the weapons that he needed. They finally got him all the weapons he needed, and I think that is kind of ridiculous because he had a rookie wide receiver that was his number 1, Odell Beckham, who was a very aged out wide receiver that
respect to him, but he's become the most overrated player in the NFL.
Right, fair enough. Yeah. And then you have Mark Andrews, who missed multiple games. So if you're going to say that, the Ravens had the best opportunity, I don't know that I believe that. Now, do I think the Chiefs had the best opportunity? No, because they didn't have the receivers either. But I'm just saying, like, in a super stacked conference like the AFC, you're going to have more playmakers, more ability. You're going to need a true number 1 running back sometimes, not a committee of guys that do well because they have a scheme that works really well for them, more than the player.
Yeah, and I mean, I think everybody's always said put the receivers around him. I don't think that that's really the area of which he needed help the most, because you need to lean in what you're great at, and when you're great at running the football, go get the best guy or one of the best guys. And they've been the number 1 rushing attack with a plethora of just journeyman guys. Just a guy, Gus Edwards, Keaton Mitchell, Justice Hill, aging Mark Ingram. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins just hasn't been able to stay healthy. Who knows what could have been with that? We actually played against him in real life, coming from LaGrange. But you had all the running back talent in the world that just was not there, and you still succeeded. Just imagine what you can do if you actually had a threat to where you actually have to stack it in the box. And so maybe Odell Beckham Jr. can actually perform
right
in those situations and scenarios. But yeah, I think they're interesting because obviously they had the highest point differential in 4 years this year. They actually, the thing that impressed me most wasn't that, but just how much they dominated the good teams in the regular season,
absolutely.
dropping 50 plus on Miami late in the year and San Francisco just dominating them the way they did. And that's really the way that Lamar won his second MVP. It was just those kinds of performances. It wasn't close. And there weren't teams really competing. And so they were a lot of teams Super Bowl pick. And once we kind of got into the postseason, when you're looking at matchups and it's like who's going to come out on top, they're at home against Kansas City, and I picked Kansas City. And it had nothing to do with statistics, had nothing to do with anything from a matchup perspective other than I've seen Patrick Mahomes come through in these moments, and I have not seen Lamar.
Right.
And lo and behold, Patrick Mahomes, with the lack of receivers he had, played the perfect game, essentially. Took care of the football, moved where he needed to. They didn't score a ton. They really only scored one touchdown after the initial opening drive to Travis Kelce.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they did all that. The defense did their job on Patrick Mahomes, but he just didn't lose them the game.
Right.
And Lamar was forcing things. He was missing wide open checkdowns and throws, throwing interceptions into triple coverage when you're just down 2 scores and a field goal makes it a 1-score game. Those kinds of things. It's just like, man, you are now a 2-time MVP.
Right.
You can't be doing these kinds of things. And it's not just the picks, but it's the timing in which they happen, the situation. It just has not come together. And I don't know if that's a scheme thing, because obviously they were the number 1 rush team and they had less than 6 rush attempts by running backs in the game. Like, it just was a non-factor. And so it's like, oh, you're a run team, but you're going to just run spread the whole. Like, okay, that helps us more than it helps you. That's what I'm thinking that the Chiefs are thinking. So, yeah, I mean, they're a very talented team, both offensively and defensively, top 3 scoring offense and defense this year. But, you know, it's kind of to a lesser extent of San Fran, of just like, what are you going to do to get over the hump? Because you're not going to get better.
Right, of course. And I think
you got the team you got.
Yeah, and you have built this offensive line. You have Patrick Ricard. I'm sorry. And these types of players that are built to run the ball, and you're not doing it. 6 rushes. I think we talked about that after that game. And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that stat, and just thinking, how is that even a recipe for success? That a team that doesn't run the ball runs the ball more than 6 times a game with their running backs.
Yeah.
And so just to think about the fact that the highest rushing rate in the NFL decided not to run the ball.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you get down 3 scores early and it's just like, throw out the game plan. We just got to do what we can to make it close. The entire game was a 1-2 score game from the jump. They had the opening score. Kansas City answered. Then they got a turnover, went and scored. They were up 1 score, and then they went up 2 scores, and then we're down up 1 score, and game's close.
Right.
Why are you getting away from what you do best? And I don't know if that's because of Lamar, but even in the situations that they do present him, coaches, whatever play that they designed or drew up for you to do, again, they didn't throw it in triple coverage.
Yeah,
that's what you did.
Absolutely.
So those, you can make fun of the play calling all you want. At the end of the day, he's got to make the decisions, because if anybody's going to dethrone Patrick Mahomes, who does not make mistakes when it matters, that's what you have to do to
win those games.
To win those games.
Absolutely. The other thing that they're going to have a hard time with is they have 3 pretty big free agents on their defensive side of the ball.
Mm-hmm. A couple of All-Pros.
Yeah.
Madubuike and Queen.
Yeah, Madubuike might have been one of the coolest surprises of this season. 15 sacks from the interior defensive line. Mm-hmm. That is just unheard of. And so he's a game changer. And I don't foresee him being able to be re-signed. I think that his price is just going to be too much for what they can do.
Well, I actually think that he'll be a prime candidate to be tagged.
Right.
But again, you really lack cap space to begin with, so you're strapped from there. So do you sell high while you can and sprinkle that around a little bit, because you can get some pretty good draft capital for him, because everybody needs a defensive interior presence. Look at what Chris Jones or Aaron Donald in recent years have been able to do, and Ndamukong Suh to a lesser extent. Over time, like when you have game changers in the interior, they can disrupt a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And they made Justin Madubuike a lot of money.
Right.
And that's pretty cool. With the tag, he'll be cheaper. So if you trade him, you can get more for him for at least that year. Mm-hmm. And normally teams that are on the cusp of pushing for a playoff spot, pushing to, get into possibly the conference championships, they go for guys like that. I think, it's very exciting because he's only from down the road. He played at A&M, things like that. And so he's a fun guy to talk about.
It's a great story.
Yeah. Patrick Queen, also going to be most likely gone. They got Roquan Smith, and
it's kind of hard to pay two linebackers.
Yeah.
Let alone one. So, he's kind of one that I've brought up before, that he's been very up and down-ish. Mm-hmm. He kind of put it together this year, made the second team All-Pro, stayed healthy, did all those good things, but also a large part of that is because the blunt of the responsibility was put on Roquan Smith, and you were able to free roam and range and make plays. And so he kind of did what Devin White is expected to do. Like in very similar situations with Lavonte David and Devin White, how both from LSU played together on the national championship team, but you got an all-pro, Pro Bowl, multi-time Pro Bowl veteran linebacker, and you just got to be a dude.
Yeah,
go absolutely. Be a dude. And Devin White hasn't really lived up to that, but Patrick Queen finally had his breakout year after being so up and down for his first three. They actually didn't pick up his option, I believe, and that's why he's already a free agent now. So it's kind of hard, because if Madubuike is the guy that's probably a more priority, losing him for nothing is going to suck.
Yeah. I think, the IQ part of the game, for his, and that's something we talk about a lot, is like sometimes there's teams where one linebacker is a better athlete, better football player probably than the other, but one of them's smarter. Mm-hmm. And the smarter one can take care of like the calls, the checks, telling the D-line what to do, kind of doing that type of thing, and allow, Patrick Queen to just run and go play football. And that's what you're saying. Like, he's just a runner and a thumper, and I think Roquan probably allowed him to be more comfortable just by the presence and, knowing the defense and talking through, the plays and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's that's overlooked a lot of times to me. It's like, I'm always going to name big, of course, like you think about good teams and good players, but you just made a case about Lavonte David and Devin White. We would expect more from Devin White because Lavonte David is such a high IQ player. It does all that work for him, and then Devin just has to go play. It makes me think of like Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis.
Yeah.
And, Luke Kuechly was the brains of the operation. Told offenses what they were running before they got out there and did it. Mm-hmm. And Thomas Davis just made plays and was, now Luke Kuechly, of course, made plays too, but, Thomas Davis was put in positions just by being around that guy to make those plays. So that's, one thing that I think is overlooked a lot of times.
Yeah. And I mean, we saw somewhat of a resurgence from Jadeveon Clowney, former number one pick, that has just been a journeyman since his days in Houston. And you had other guys like Brent Urban, Ronald Darby, vets that contributed to your defense. You got a lot of them free agents likely to lose, so you're losing a lot of depth, especially on the side of the ball which was your bigger strength in my estimation. But like I said, this team kind of comes down, and it'll just kind of be driven where Lamar takes them, because at this point, your top 5 quarterback, you've solidified that, one of the few to win 2 MVPs before age 28. I mean, it's you have it all, and at some point you just kind of got to get it done. He's one of the few that people would believe can do that, but at the same time, we've seen Josh Allen play his best when he's gone up against Mahomes. Joe Burrow has been the Patrick Mahomes dethroner,
right.
Winning 3 or 4, and the one loss was a controversial towards the end of the game with the out of bounds flag that may or may not have happened, and who knows what would have happened in that game. But those two have played the best, and Lamar, you just kind of seem to take a step back a little bit. You don't bring your A game in those big moments. It's, I know it was his first postseason, but I don't think it compared. This disappointment was nearly as bad as losing to Tennessee after going 14-2, losing the first round to a road team that just really controlled the game the entire time, and then put up the most bogus 400 all-purpose yards that you can even say, don't look at the box score.
Right.
Look at what the game happened, and then go from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the expectations there now, especially, I mean, he had 1 MVP before, but now he's got 2. When you're a 2-time MVP, like we don't look at Aaron Rodgers being a 4-time MVP and be like, oh yeah, he's achieved the success. We've said like, no, he's kind of disappointed.
Yeah.
Based on what he's had. Peyton Manning winning 2 Super Bowls. People are like, I mean, yeah, like I don't think he did enough though.
Yeah.
Based on the success, because when you're that guy, like you have to break through and achieve stuff, and so he's still got to get there to get the 1.
Right.
To even be in that conversation with those guys. We'll see if that happens. I think because of the strength of schedule that they have, because the entire AFC North just is going to be bombarded with tough games. They have 10 games against 2023 playoff teams this year. Just highest in the NFL. I think they're more equipped to handle that compared to a Cleveland, because they've got their quarterback situation figured out. They've got the best coach probably in the division as well. But, taking a step back in the win total at this point, I don't think is as big of a deal. You just still got to be in the dance.
Yeah,
and when it matters, because at this point, it's probably going to come down to Cincinnati, Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City, the typical suitors with the best quarterbacks, and you can't be QB4 when
it matters, when the lights come on. Taking a step back from 13 wins is, 11 wins. Okay, good job. There's nothing wrong with that.
You think me as a Cowboys fan winning 12 games 3 straight years cares? Like, no, because we disappoint.
Yeah,
doesn't matter. That's what we are. So
Kansas City, they don't necessarily win, 13 games, 12 games. They, they're 11 win teams going to the playoffs, and they just know how to win then, and that's what matters. It's not so much, of course, yes, you want to come out of the season, you want to be the undefeated Patriots, about to go 19-0, but you can't always do that. So I think that, that's a big deal when you get to that point, showing up and being the best player that you have been that year. And so, that was Baltimore. This is a very exciting division because they're constantly moving up and down.
Roller coaster beating each other up.
Yeah, the Bengals go to beat the Chiefs. I don't know, in the last 3 years. Pittsburgh's always right there. Cleveland is finally doing the right things, and still can't figure quarterbacks out, but it's okay, because what they did is they made it where they don't even care if they have a good quarterback. They just play good defense, and you don't have to score very many points. So yeah, this is a fun, exciting division, and I see them obviously not winning 43 games total next year, but I could see them staying up pretty high in that total.
Oh yeah, like the worst team. Take your pick on who you think it is. They're probably a playoff team in most other divisions.
Yeah,
just because of what they wouldn't have to go through.
Right.
Especially you look at like the NFC South. I think any one of these teams would be the clear favorite right now.
Yeah.
And you could make an argument for multiple other divisions as well. So it's really exciting. Kind of weird because this is one of the divisions that you don't see many teams. We see a lot of directions of where they're going with many of the divisions that we talked about. Like you're trending up, you're trending down. All of these teams probably are lateral.
Yeah.
Based on the situation what they had, or you didn't really get the full version of the team because of the injuries of multiple of their quarterbacks.
Right.
Baltimore is kind of like you can't really achieve, at least in the regular season, higher than what they did.
Right.
So it's like they're kind of going to be lateral with the moves and stuff to where they're probably going to be just as good, but that could also set up a lot of disappointment as well. I mean, as shocking as it would be, like if only one team made the playoffs from this division, I wouldn't be shocked based on the I guess route or avenue that they have to go through.
Similarly, I think the other side is if they had 3 teams make the playoffs, that would not be shocking either.
Right.
It's kind of one of those things. I think, if this division had 4 11-win teams across the board and they went 3-3 in their division games, that's basically where we see them, I think, I think if I had to pick a team that I would think would be last, it's Pittsburgh right now. And we're going to do outlook videos, of course, later of like what we expect, predictions.
We'll start doing some predictions once we get some certainty of moves
and
whatnot.
But right now, Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback. So I can say pretty, surely that they would be the worst team if they all played right now. But at the same time, what will 8 months do?
Yeah.
So we'll have a lot to talk about in the upcoming videos, of course.
Right.
But
that wraps up our long series of our off-season outlook videos. I appreciate every one of you guys that have tuned in to each video and supported us at the very start of this journey that we're going on. We're going to build a very, very exciting community. This was the first series that we had to do because, off-season, we got to recap and we had to look forward on what to expect. There's a lot now we got to do in the dirty work of reacting to stuff. I was saying in the previous video, I'm excited to have those like news drops in the middle of our podcast and having to react on the jump. As soon as we get done with this, Combine starts tomorrow, and we're going to be filming and reactions to that and who surprised us, who rose, who fell, any drama or rumors that came out because teams talk. This is the first area. It's kind of like a convention of sorts where executives, GMs, scouts talk, and you hear directions of where teams are going to go.
Yeah.
And we'll start seeing that, and so that's what we're going to be reacting to very soon. And then we'll start reacting to free agency, which will start in a couple weeks. New league year's right around the corner. So it's just a lot of moving parts right now. So now it's really time where the real work begins.
Yeah, and the draft is always to me it's so much fun. The mock drafting is one of my favorite things to do, and we're going to have a positional rankings video for every position, kind of showing y'all just a bunch of guys that we think are important to know going into next year, because you look at the wide receiver position, I mean 20 guys are on that list. 20 guys that we're going to talk to you about that could be day 1 or day 2 guys, just depending on what the teams think of them and what they need. And we see wide receivers all the time. Puka Nacua, this year, later on pick, and he was pretty special. So we're going to get some of those guys in that later. Maybe the 20th guy is one of the guys that's very surprising to us. So it's exciting. We appreciate you, like Cam said, coming and watching and being a part of this, and building. We're very small right now, of course, but building it in the right way. Getting a community, having discussions, listening to what y'all think, talking with y'all. We're going to do live streams where we get to listen to y'all and what y'all's thoughts are, and y'all message into us and ask us questions or tell us that we're wrong, and that's okay. We're excited about that. We want to be, debating and discussing these things, because, football is not as easy as people act like it is. Like, it's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of things going on. And, 1 year you have an MVP, next year you're like, nah, I don't know about that guy, so that's the plan at least. And we appreciate y'all being here. Go like, subscribe, comment, go see our socials, join the Discord, ask us questions. Tell us what y'all thought about it. Maybe you're a Ravens fan and you know more than me. It's okay. I bet there's people out there that are, only one team and they know more than me because I watch the AFC West. I'm a Raiders fan. Cam's a Dallas fan. We're not necessarily just watching the AFC North. So,
yeah, I mean, we love reacting, and it's getting perspectives of all sorts. I mean, grew up in Central Texas our entire lives, and we're kind of accustomed to the teams that we've been surrounded by, and so that's kind of why we're fans of the teams we are. But at the same time, we're fans of football in general. So we want to see more football fans that just want to talk and vibe. Like we said, the Discord is going to be very exciting as we build that up, as we build the community to constantly be talking on the fly with people. Don't be afraid to be the first comment on our videos. I want to be able to respond, react, debate with, like Em said, with everybody, just because it's fun to talk football.
Yeah,
I'm going to be doing that the rest of my life. I'm sure Emory will too. So let's just do it together. Why not?
Absolutely. So, yeah, we really appreciate it, and we hope y'all get to watching the next video when it comes out after the combine, during the combine, and we appreciate it. So, y'all have a good one.
Y'all take care. Thank you, guys.